The 1970s was an era of big hair, bell-bottoms, and some seriously questionable automotive choices. From garish paint jobs to engines that struggled to rev, the 1970s witnessed the ultimate flops of muscle car history. So, which iconic models failed to live up to their roaring reputation of their predecessors? Strap in as we rev our engines to journey back in time, reliving the automotive nostalgia to reveal the 10 worst American muscle cars of the disco decade. Number 10. Ford Mustang II King Cobra. Ford Mustang was technically a pony car, but back in the day, it tried to muscle its way into the big leagues. Enter the second-generation Mustang, born out of a desperate need for more fuel-efficient rides. Lee Iacocca, the brains behind the downsized wonder, was playing the cards he was dealt, and let's just say it wasn't a winning hand. When it came to power, well, let's just say it was just about as impressive as a snail in a foot race. Even the top-of-the-line 4.9-liter Windsor V8 could barely muster a measly 142 horsepower. Yeah, you heard that right. And don't even get us started on the King Cobra. It might sound fierce, but it's more like a kitten with a fancy collar. But hey, despite its lackluster performance, the Ford Mustang II managed to sell over 1.1 million copies from 1974 to 1978. Talk about a triumph of marketing over muscle. Plus, it even snagged Motor Trend's Car of the Year in 1974. Go figure. Number 9. Oldsmobile 442. Let's take a ride down memory lane with the original 1964 Oldsmobile 442, a car that defined the era with its blend of big, comfortable, and downright fast performance. Enter the 4th generation, and it's like the wheels fell off the wagon. Sure, Chevy's faithful 305 V8 was still hanging around, but it was about as lively as a sloth on a Sunday morning, churning a measly 160 horsepower. Talk about a snooze fest. With a 10.5-second 0 to 60 mile per hour sprint, that's 97 kilometers per hour for our metric friends. You'd be better off timing it with a sundial. But wait, it gets better. Or should we say worse? A slightly more potent 5.7-liter V8 came along in 1980, but it was like putting lipstick on a pig. Barely an improvement from its paltry 185 horsepower. And sure, you could opt for the 5-speed manual transmission. But let's face it, most folks settled for the 3-speed auto or 4-speed manual. Number 8. Pontiac GTO. Buckle up, gearheads, because we're diving into the world of the Pontiac GTO. A car that's not only a legend, but practically the godfather of the American muscle car segment. But when it comes to the 4th generation GTO, things took a nosedive faster than a lead balloon. With just 1 year under its belt, the 4th gen GTO left a lot to be desired. Sharing the X-body platform with the 3rd generation Chevy Nova and other compact GM offerings, the GTO's once mighty roar was reduced to a mere whimper. All you got was a neutered 5.7-liter 350 V8 that mustered a measly 200 horsepower. Talk about a letdown. Feeling the muscle car fever yet? Hit that like button if you're ready to rev up your excitement, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling automotive adventures. Number 7. Ford Gran Torino. The mid-1970s, a time when muscle cars still roared despite the tightening grip of emission regulations, and leading the charge was none other than the Ford Gran Torino, a beast that towered above the competition for its size, luxury, and unmistakable presence. Forget the Mustang. The Gran Torino was the heavyweight champion of Ford's lineup, boasting a range-topping engine that would make your heart skip a beat. We're talking about the mammoth 7.4-liter 460 V8, a powerhouse that once roared with over 400 horsepower in its heyday. Talking about performance, this behemoth of a car may have looked like it could fly, but in reality, it was more of a heavy lumbering boat. Clocking in at a leisurely 9.6 seconds for the 0 to 60 mile per hour sprint, the Gran Torino was far from the speed demon it once was. Number 6. Chevrolet Camaro. The Chevrolet Camaro hit the streets in 1970 with all the promise of American muscle glory. But as the years rolled on, things took a turn for the worst, and fast. 1971 rolls around, and suddenly the once mighty Chevy V8s are feeling more like kittens than roaring lions. With each passing year, the performance of the Camaro seemed to dwindle until it hit rock bottom in 1975. In a cruel twist of fate, the most powerful engine you could get in a second-gen Camaro was a lackluster 5.7-liter V8, that's 350 cubic inches, churning out a measly 145 horsepower. Yeah, you heard that right. Talk about a disappointment. But there was a glimmer of hope in the form of the optional Z28 package, which promised some performance enhancements, yet even with a slight bump in power to 155 horsepower. So what does this all mean for performance? Well, Buckle up, because the 0 to 60 mile per hour sprint ranged from a sluggish 10.5 to a downright painful 12 seconds depending on which transmission and package you opted for. Number 5. Dodge Charger. One of the most iconic American muscle cars of all time was the Dodge Charger, but even this legendary beast wasn't immune to the woes of the oil crisis. Sure, you had your choice of engines, ranging from the 318 to the 400 cubic inch V8s, but don't expect them to pack the punch of their predecessors. In 1976, things hit rock bottom, with the range-topping 6.6-liter engine putting out a mere 185 horsepower and 285 foot-pounds of torque. Talk about a gut punch. But hey, at least you had your choice of transmission. Though the range-topping engine was mated exclusively to the 3-speed automatic, and when it came to performance, well, let's just say you weren't winning any drag races with a leisurely 0 to 60 mile per hour sprint in 11 seconds. The Charger was more of a cruiser than a bruiser. Let us know which muscle car has stolen your heart. Then smash the like button and subscribe to fuel your passion of all things automotive. Number 4. AMX. American Motors Corporation, AMC, decided to crash the muscle car party fashionably late with their mighty AMX in the late 60s. Now, if there's one thing you need to know about AMC, is that they always did things a little differently, and the AMX was no exception. With its unique styling that stood out like a sore thumb in a sea of Detroit's finest, the AMX made a bold statement from the get-go. But let's talk power, shall we? Underneath that distinctive hood lay a beast of an engine, the mighty 390, packing enough punch to leave any challenger in the dust. It's no wonder that the AMX became the holy grail of muscle car collectors everywhere, sought after like a buried treasure in the desert sands. Fast forward to '77, and AMC decided it was time to reignite the flames of excitement with a modern update. Unfortunately, the reality didn't quite live up to the hype, with a design that looked like an unholy offspring of a Datsun and a Mustang II, and a lackluster 304 V8 engine that barely mustered 120 horsepower. But the AMX soldiered on until 1980, when thankfully most of them met their fate at the crusher. Number 3. Pontiac Grand Prix. The mid-1970s was a time when American car manufacturers were forced to downsize faster than you could say gas guzzler. And right in the thick of it was the Pontiac Grand Prix, a name steeped in history but facing a brave new world of smaller, more fuel-efficient realities. Now let's talk 1980, a year that would go down in infamy for those seeking a thrill behind the wheel of a Grand Prix. The mighty 4.9-liter V8 was replaced by a pint-sized 4.3 engine, churning out a measly 125 horsepower and 210 foot-pounds of torque. Yeah, you heard that right. Talk about a buzzkill. But in 1981, Pontiac decided to throw diesel into the mix with a 5.7-liter Oldsmobile V8 with a paltry 105 horsepower and 205 foot-pounds of torque. It was like adding insult to injury. Not to mention, it was expensive, unreliable, and about as quick as a snail on a stroll, with a mind-numbing 16.4 seconds 0 to 60 mile per hour time. Number 2. Pontiac Transam and Transam Turbo. Immortalized in movies like Smokey and the Bandit, this legendary ride may have captured our hearts on the silver screen, but when it came to performance, well, let's just say it was a bit of a letdown. 1978 rolls around and Pontiac unveils the Trans Am with the swagger of its on-screen counterpart, driven by the legendary Burt Reynolds himself. But alas, the reality didn't quite match the fantasy. Under the hood, the 5.0-liter Chevrolet 305 V8 was churning out a merely 125 horsepower and 245 foot-pounds of torque. And let's talk about performance, because the sprint to 60 miles per hour felt more like an eternity, clocking in at a sluggish 12.9 seconds. But in 1980, Pontiac decided to shake things up with the introduction of the 4.9-liter Pontiac 301 Turbo V8. Number 1. Plymouth Roadrunner. The original Roadrunners were the muscle cars that weren't exactly sleek, but boy did they pack a punch. Roadrunner was Plymouth's answer to the call for an affordable, no-frills muscle car experience. But as they say, with great power comes, well, a lot of quality control issues. According to Street Muscle magazine, the first-year Volaris faced more recalls than you could shake a stick at, earning them a spot in the annals of automotive history as one of the most recalled cars of all time. Now let's talk about Plymouth's attempt to recapture that Roadrunner magic with the Volare. Sure, they slapped on the Roadrunner graphics and stripes, but let's be real, did a car struggling to hit 100 miles per hour really need a rear spoiler? Unfortunately, the 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner, while boasting an impressive array of power plants, was constrained by certain limitations. The base model was equipped with a 383 cubic inch V8 engine, delivering a respectable 335 horsepower and 425 foot-pounds of torque. For those seeking more muscle, options included the 440 cubic inch six-pack V8, churning out 390 horsepower and 490 foot-pounds of torque, and the legendary 426 Hemi V8, offering a staggering 425 horsepower and 490 foot-pounds of torque. Buyers were scratching their heads, wondering if it was all just for show. If you want to add on to this list, let us know your comments below, and don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel.